expecting anything life-changing, just trying to figure out what I was going to eat the next day, and then I find a pizza buffet. And not just any pizza buffet, but one that actually looks good. And I immediately knew, like there was no debate in my mind, I was going there for lunch the next day. This is Pizza Mall. It's literally a minute walk from Shinchon Station, which already makes it feel convenient, but also dangerously close that you might end up there a little too often. And I feel like this place is obviously perfect if you love pizza, but also, even if you don't consider yourself a pizza person, I genuinely think that this could change your mind. Because the selection they have isn't just your standard, here's your cheese pizza, here's your pepperoni, here's a veggie. It's more creative than that. It's a little unexpected, and I think when food feels fun, you're way more open to it. The pricing here actually surprised me. It varies depending on when you go, which I think is fair. For lunch on weekdays, it's 12,900 won, which honestly feels kind of unreal for a buffet. Dinner on weekdays is 15,900, and then weekends and holidays are 17,900 for the whole day. And I feel like with buffets, you always do this mental calculation of, am I going to eat enough to make this worth it? But also, sometimes it's not even about that. Sometimes it's just about the freedom to try things without overthinking it. I think that's why I was so excited. It wasn't just the pizza, it was the idea of being able to try a little bit of everything. At some point I realized I needed energy, so I ended up drinking 2 cups of coffee, which might sound a little excessive, but in my mind it made complete sense. I had 1 shot of espresso and 1 Americano, but I feel like it balanced out. The espresso gave me that immediate kind of jolt, and the Americano made me feel like I was pacing myself, like I was being responsible, even though I was literally preparing to eat as much pizza as I possibly could. Honestly, if I could, I probably would have some form of coffee with every meal, not because I need it, but because I enjoy the taste. When I finally got into the food, I didn't want to rush it. I think with buffets, there's this temptation to just grab everything at once, to overload your plate. But I've learned that it's better to just take your time, to treat it almost like courses, even though it's self-serve. The pizza selection was actually really interesting. It wasn't just the standard options you expect. It felt a little more creative, a little experimental in a way that made it fun to keep going back and seeing what else there is. And I noticed I wasn't really committing to one type either. I would just take a slice, try it, and then move on to something completely different, which I think is the best way to do a buffet, because you're not there to have one perfect plate. One thing that really stood out to me was how creative some of the pizzas were. Like they weren't afraid to do something a little unexpected. There was one in particular that I feel like a lot of people would immediately question, which was a strawberry pizza. And I know, just hearing that, it doesn't sound like it should work. It's literally strawberries on a pizza with strawberry syrup. But don't knock it until you try it, because it was actually surprisingly good. And I know that might be something people completely disagree with me on, which is fair. It's definitely not what you expect when you think of pizza, but I think that's kind of the point. I think we're so used to categorizing food into what should and shouldn't go together, but when you step out of that a little bit, you end up finding things that you wouldn't have tried otherwise. And even if you don't end up loving it, at least you tried something different. But in this case, I actually really liked it. And then, of course, I was already thinking about dessert, because I always think about dessert. Even before I've really eaten anything else, there's a part of my brain that's like, okay, but what's the dessert situation? And this is where it got really fun for me because they have this waffle making section, and that is something that is so specifically up my alley. It almost feels like it was designed for me. There's just something about DIY food that makes it so much more enjoyable. Like technically, it's still just a waffle, but because you're the one pouring the batter, setting the timer, waiting for it to cook, it feels different. So you pour the batter into the waffle pan, you close it, and then you set the timer for about a minute and a half. And there's this small moment where you're just waiting and it builds this tiny bit of anticipation. And then when you hear the beep, it's like, okay, this is your creation now. And then comes the best part, which is decorating it. The thing about me is that I don't believe in a boring waffle. I just don't. If I have the option to add toppings, I'm definitely going to take that seriously. I want a waffle that feels a little chaotic, but in a good way. Like, I want to try everything. So that's exactly what I did. I added a bit of everything, and I think my appreciation for waffles has generally increased because of experiences like this. Because it's not just about eating it, it's about creating it. And I think that says something bigger about food in general. When you're involved in the process, even just a little bit, it becomes more memorable. It's not just something you consumed, it's something you participated in. And then, of course, there's ice cream. And I feel like ice cream is one of those things where I'm always going to say yes. There's never a moment where I'm like, you know what, I don't need ice cream. That has never happened. Ice cream it completes something. It doesn't even matter what the meal is. It could be anything. But ending with something cold and sweet just feels right. It's like a reset. And sitting there eating dessert, I kind of started thinking about how different this experience felt compared to eating back home. Not necessarily better or worse, just different. In Korea, I feel like dining alone is way more normal. There's less pressure to turn a meal into a social event. You can just exist, eat, think, observe. And I actually really like that. It gives you space to notice things that you wouldn't normally notice. Even the location being in Shincheon, which is such a lively area, especially with all the students around. It adds a certain energy. It feels youthful, but not in an overwhelming way, more like there's always something happening, but you can choose how much of it you want to be a part of. And I think that's kind of how this whole experience felt. Like I could fully immerse myself in it, or I could just sit back and enjoy it quietly. So yeah, pizza mall, waffles, ice cream, and coffee included. It's definitely a spot I'd recommend. So if you're looking for a casual lunch, a fun dessert, or just an excuse to indulge in coffee and pizza at the same time, this is definitely one of those spots worth checking out.